You are the biggest fraud to ever sit in the United States Senate. You are a disgrace to this institution and an utter coward. You are a political buffoon at best.
That was FBI Director Kash Patel unloading on Senator Adam Schiff in a Capitol Hill hearing that veered from the assassination of Charlie Kirk to the still unanswered questions about Jeffrey Epstein. Patel was testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee about the two explosive issues and more, and that is when things got pretty fiery very fast. We are going to break down Patel's testimony, the blowback, what this all means. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Well, this was one of the most charged oversight hearings in recent memory. FBI Director Kash Patel testifying under oath in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee lasted several hours. Senators demanding answers to different topics, tempers flaring, Epstein, Charlie Kirk. So if you didn't see it or you want the condensed version of some of the highlights, here you go. I mean, at one point, Patel looks across the dais at Senator Adam Schiff and, didn't hold anything back.
You are the biggest fraud to ever sit in the United States Senate. You are a disgrace to this institution and an utter coward. You are a political buffoon at best.
Yeah, we'll get there. But first, let's back up. Let's walk through why this hearing had the nation's attention, why it all boiled down to two explosive topics, right? The assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk and the still unresolved questions of the Jeffrey Epstein files. Now, if you remember, on September 10th, just around noon, Charlie Kirk was gunned down. Within hours, FBI Director Kash Patel made the investigation front and center. He had posted updates in real time on social media, something that critics say that sowed confusion, that it may have jeopardized the case. That was an allegation. Now, Patel defended his approach, calling it transparency. And when the Senate Judiciary Committee convened days later, it wasn't just about the Kirk case, definitely came up, but senators also zeroed in on Patel's handling of the Epstein files, the firing of FBI agents, his loyalty to President Donald Trump. And we're not going to go down the political rabbit hole. That's not what Sidebar is, but we will stick directly or strictly to Patel's testimony as it pertains to the Kirk investigation and to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, to help you get an understanding of how charged this was, let's actually start with Committee Chair Dick Durbin. Since he's the top Democrat on the committee, he gave an opening statement and he wasted no time setting the tone. He accused Kash Patel of politicizing the FBI, of running loyalty tests, of mishandling communications with the public after Charlie Kirk's killing.
President Biden retained Director Wray, a lifelong Republican who was President Trump's nominee for the office. After his second election in an unprecedented move, President Trump forced out Director Wray and nominated Kash Patel, arguably the most partisan FBI director ever. Director Patel came to the FBI with a political mission, and he spelled it out in writing in detail. He wrote government gangsters, quote, "The rot at the core of the FBI is not just scandalous, it's an existential threat to our Republican form of government," end quote. And with the power of his office and the blessings of the president, he attacked the FBI with a vengeance.
And Durbin then went further. He warned senators not to weaponize political violence, pointing to the killings of both Charlie Kirk and Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman, the latter of whom was shot and killed alongside her husband at their home earlier this year.
The men and women who serve at the FBI and the American people deserve a director who has the ability and the character to restore the Bureau to its place as the preeminent law enforcement agency. All of us in public life, on both sides of the aisle, have a responsibility to bring down the temperature and to work to unite the American people. Let's be clear, Republicans are not Nazis and Democrats are not evil, as Mr. Patel has claimed. Democrats are not responsible for the murder of Charlie Kirk, and Republicans were not responsible for the murder of Melissa Hortman. Our political opponents are not our enemies. We are all Americans, and we should be working together to keep the American people safe and protect their constitutional rights.
Now, you may think that by watching Sidebar, you've seen it all, right? Think again. 50 Ways to Catch a Killer brings you real cases where detectives had to flip the script to take down cold-blooded killers. Hosted by 50 Cent, This isn't your typical crime show. It is a high-stakes, twist-filled ride into the minds of investigators who think outside the badge to break the case. From unforgettable setups to shocking reveals, every episode proves when killers think that they got away with murder, think again. Watch 50 Ways to Catch a Killer with 50 Cent exclusively on Fox Nation. Then it was Patel's turn, and he began by defending how the FBI handled the Kirk investigation, walking senators step by step through this timeline.
Charlie Kirk was shot at 12:23 p.m. on September 10th. I think this timeline is critically important. Less than a day later, the FBI, at my direction, released the first set of images of the suspect that we captured based on our analysis on the ground. Later that evening, while conducting extensive interviews and cell phone analysis, and also flying out evidence response teams and hostage rescue teams and evidence tacticians who were collecting evidence in live time and flying them back to Washington, D.C. in our laboratories for immediate analyses, we were able to extract video from the campus feed, and at my direction at 8 p.m., in partnership and promise to working with the public to bring this fugitive to justice, we released a newly, never before seen video of the suspect. We also released new enhanced photos of the suspect. A few hours later, that suspect was in custody, pursuant to the interrogation of the suspect's own father, who stated, "When I saw that video that you released, I recognized it was my son, and I confronted him, and he was handed over to lawful law enforcement authorities." That is the FBI working with the public as I promised, being transparent and providing critical information along the way in the manhunt for the suspect and suspects involved in Charlie's assassination. We received over 11,000 tips in the first 24 hours alone. We received 16,000 submissions to our digital media enterprise and tip lines. That is a large number of material to go through. I want to thank President Trump and the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, for their unwavering support and commitment resources to this and all investigations. I also want to especially thank our colleagues in Utah, the Governor's Office, DPS, and the sheriffs out there. State and local law enforcement partnership has been a cornerstone since I took over at the FBI, and it was no different here. And our teams in Salt Lake City, our SACs out there across the country, our lab technicians in Quantico who raced to complete the evidence analysis so the public could have the answers they need. These people worked through the night without sleep for days on end. They are to be commended. They are not to be attacked.
And look, it was arguably one of Patel's strongest moments, right? Framing the FBI's work as fast, coordinated, transparent, and let the record hold, right? Charlie Kirk's suspected killer, Tyler Robinson, was apprehended just 33 hours after the shooting. This is a feat that even Patel's critics on the Hill had to acknowledge, and one he was congratulated for during this hearing. But Kash Patel also faced some pointed questions about social media's role in political violence. Senator Lindsey Graham pressed him on whether platforms like Discord, which you're probably all familiar with by now, plays a role in the Kirk case, whether or not that was radicalizing Americans.
After the assassination of Charlie Kirk, there seems to be one refrain from everybody, and that's about the effect of social media. Do you believe that social media is one of the instruments radicalizing America and inciting violence?
Well, it's not. My belief is based on the data, and the data shows that social media is wildly out of control when it comes to radicalizing.
You're dead right. So what did you just say? This guy's the FBI director. He says that social media is wildly out of control. Now, free speech, we all agree with that, but you can't yell fire in the theater, right?
Yes, sir.
Free speech doesn't allow you to go online and groom a child for sexual.
No, it does not.
Okay. Free speech doesn't allow you to go on the internet and basically incite somebody to kill another person, right?
Absolutely not.
So if it's illegal offline, it should be illegal online. Agreed? Whatever the law is.
Yes, sir.
Just because you're online doesn't give you a get-out-of-jail-free card.
No, sir.
And when the discussion turned to Discord, this is the chat platform where the Kirk suspect, Tyler Robinson, allegedly hinted at what he had done or allegedly confessed, you had Senator Josh Hawley ask Patel if others were involved in that chat. And it turns out, according to Patel, there were many other people involved in that chat.
Reports have suggested that the FBI is investigating a broader network of groups that may have had some knowledge of the shooter's plans. Can you give us any details on that following up what you already said in public, how's the FBI working to find other potential accomplices, folks who may have known about the shooter's plans, folks who may have encouraged him? Any update on any of that?
So in terms of what we do for an interrogation perspective, we go and reach out to the family and community immediately. And we've conducted those investigations and interrogations with local law enforcement, and we're continuing to do that because those closest to the suspect are going to hopefully know the most about the suspect and his beliefs and his ideology. On top of that, unfortunately, it has been leaked that there was a Discord chat, and for those unfamiliar with it, it's a gaming chat room online that the suspect participated in. So what we're doing, we've already done, is serve legal process, not just on Discord, so that the information we gathered is sustained and held in a evidentiary posture that we could use in prosecution should it be decided to do so. And we're also going to be investigating anyone and everyone involved in that Discord chat.
Okay, very good. I see the public reports that the Discord thread had as many as 20 additional users. It sounds like you're trying to run down all of that to see if that's accurate, who else may have been on that thread, what they may have known. Is that fair to say?
It's a lot more than that, and we're running them all down.
It's a lot more than 20?
Yes, sir.
And you're running all of that to ground?
Every single one.
Yeah, fantastic.
And let me just talk real quick about Discord, because the Washington Post first reported that Robinson may have messaged friends on this platform after the shooting, before he was arrested, allegedly confessing to the crime, right? So allegedly writing at 7:57 p.m. local time in Utah, "Hey guys, I have bad news for you all. It was me at UVU yesterday. I'm sorry for all of this. I'm surrendering through a sheriff friend in a few moments. Thanks for all the good times and laughs. You've all been so amazing. Thank you all for everything." By the way, in a piece by journalist Ken Klippenstein, where he apparently posted messages from that Discord chat, this is after that alleged post from Robinson, you had another user who allegedly wrote to the group, "Hey everyone, if you have not seen the news yet, Tyler's post above is true. He was taken into custody earlier today for the shooting of Charlie Kirk." Now, it's not entirely clear whether criminal charges will arise for anybody on this chat, or there is even criminal liability. Questions about whether anybody contributed, aided, abetted, conspired, those will hopefully be investigated, but just making a note of that. Now, even with the quick arrest in this case, Patel couldn't outrun one major controversy. That was that just hours into this investigation, he took to social media to announce that a subject was in custody. The problem, of course, is that person wasn't the shooter. And the announcement had to be, I don't know if the argument is walk back, but basically there was a subject in custody, they were questioned, they were released. This led arguably to a lot of confusion. And senators, they jumped all over this.
Director Patel, at one point you made an announcement that the suspect was in custody. We got our man. It turned out that was not true. In fact, I think that was about 27 hours before the person now in custody was apprehended. Why did you make that statement?
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate you letting me address this. What the FBI does is not just locate and find suspects, but we also participate in eliminating subjects. And what we had at the time was a subject in custody in relation to this investigation. So in my commitment to work with the public to help identify subjects and suspects, I put that information out. And then when we interviewed him, I put out the results of that. And could I have been more careful in my verbiage and included an A subject instead of subject? Sure, in the heat of the moment, but I was doing the best I could.
In all candor, I don't quite get that, because if we have our man, that would suggest to the public that everybody can rest and relax and not then continue to provide information to local law enforcement and to you.
Well,
so that was a mistake.
I don't see it as a mistake. I see it as something working with the public to identify that there was a subject
So if
in
you
custody.
if you put out a statement that says we've got our man, and in fact it turns out that you didn't have your man, that's not a mistake?
But that's not what I said.
Well, I'll go on. That's my understanding.
Okay, now if the Kirk assassination dominated the first half of the hearing, the second half was consumed by an unresolved scandal. You know what I'm talking about. It's one that continues to fascinate and enrage the public, Jeffrey Epstein, which we have covered extensively here on Sidebar. The questions for Patel weren't about how quickly the FBI could track down a gunman. They were about what the FBI knows and what it may still be holding or hiding back about Epstein's network, his so-called black book. His longtime associate Ghislaine Maxwell, Senator John Kennedy, opened with a question aimed right at the heart of the public's curiosity. Who else, if anyone, did Epstein traffic?
I want to ask you about the Epstein files. Have you seen the Epstein files?
I have not reviewed the entirety of it myself, but a good amount.
Would it be fair to say that Mr. Epstein trafficked young women, including, in some instances, minors, for sex to himself?
That was specifically the allegations in the 2018 indictment in the Southern District of New York.
Okay. Who else did he traffic these young women to? You've seen most of the files. Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?
Himself. There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals. And the information we have, again, is limited.
So the answer is no one
For the information that we have
in the files.
in the case file.
And one thing just to add to that, so Ghislaine Maxwell, she was convicted, let's not forget, of trafficking victims to Epstein and Epstein alone. But Kennedy pushed Patel about transparency, about whether the Bureau would release everything it has or whether court orders and legal limits would keep pieces of this record hidden from the public.
And I understand that the department and the agency have decided to release them in cooperation with the House committee. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So you're releasing them a little bit at a time. Is that correct?
We're releasing as much as we can, but we are limited by 3 different court orders, and the department went back to each of those judges to waive those court orders or have them lifted, and each of those judges declined.
Will you release all of them, or at least as many as you can?
We will release everything we are legally permitted to do so. We are continuing to work with the House on the subpoena request. We have substantially complied with it, but we will continue to release whatever we are legally permitted to do so.
Okay. I strongly encourage you to do that, Cash. This issue's not going to go away. And I think the central question for the American people is this. They know that Epstein trafficked young women for sex to himself. They want to know who, if anyone else, he trafficked these young women to. And that's a very fair question. I want to know that answer. And I think you're going to have to do more to satisfy the American people's understandable curiosity in that regard.
Now, Patel answered by walking the committee through why the files themselves are limited. Search warrants from the 2000s, the non-prosecution agreement that followed, the reality that multiple administrations had opportunities to find leads that may have been prosecuted.
What exists in the Epstein case files was a direct result of the limited search warrants from 2006 and 7, which hamstrung future investigations because of the non-prosecution agreement. And multiple administrations had the opportunity to look at the entirety of that case file and recommend prosecutions against anyone that was trafficked under Mr. Epstein and anyone that participated in that trafficking. And the only person to bring charges was the prior administration against Mr. Epstein. Now, I am not saying that others were not trafficked and others were not involved. What I am telling you is that based on the information we have, and we have continuously and publicly asked for the public to come forward with more information. If there is, we'll look at it. But based on credible information, we have released all credible information, and the information that the Department of Justice and the FBI never releases is information on investigations that are not credible. And we don't release the names of victims who weren't credible, but in the same time, we don't release the names of victims who were credible. And so that's by law. And so the information we are releasing now is historic, and it is also to the maximum capacity that the law allows.
With Kennedy having laid out the legal frame, the what we have and what we can release, the committee moved to the more combustible questions. Senator Adam Schiff took the mic, and he went after the so-called Black Book and whether the FBI had in fact been holding evidence that could implicate others.
In 2024, you were asked by Glenn Beck about Epstein's Black Book. And you said, he asked, who has Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book? And you said, Black Book, FBI. And he said, but who? That is, I mean theirs. And you said, oh, that's under the direct control of the director of the FBI. That's what you said. Was that true, Mr. Patel?
I'll rely on you quoting it accurately. I did that a couple
Was
of
it
years
true
ago.
what you represented to Mr. Beck and the president's supporters out there, or were you lying?
No,
Was it true that the Black Book, Epstein's Black Book, was in the possession of the FBI director?
The Black Book was in the possession of the FBI.
Okay, so now that you're the FBI director, you have possession of the Black Book, right?
That index has been released.
So you have Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book?
What is known as Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book has been released by us.
So is it your testimony today that in all the Epstein files, that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked no one to anyone but himself? Is that your testimony, Mr.
I never
Patel?
said Jeffrey Epstein didn't traffic anyone else.
Did he traffic any young woman to someone other than himself? That was Mr. Kennedy's question,
And I
Senator Kennedy's
said
question.
the information that 3 administrations have had access to
I'm
have
asking
made
you-
determinations that there are no investigative leads that were credible to prosecute and investigate any others. I'm
Well,
specifically
I'm asking
stating
you whether
we
it's
were
your
working on.
testimony today.
Well, you just read it, and I said it 10 minutes ago, so let the record reflect my testimony.
I just want to make sure there's no misunderstanding, because there are victims like Virginia Guifer who have testified otherwise, who have said otherwise, and you're telling the American people today that the Epstein list is a single name and it's Jeffrey Epstein. That's what we're to believe?
That's not what I'm saying. That's what you're saying, and
Well,
you
let
can
me
say
let me
whatever
ask
you
Let me
want.
ask
And then the hearing pivoted to Ghislaine Maxwell, central to the Epstein case. She was interviewed a little while ago by Deputy AG Todd Blanche. Remember when she said, if you met Epstein, there is no way that this cast of characters, of which it's extraordinary, and some are in your cabinet who you value as your co-workers and you know would be with him if he was a creep or because they wanted sexual favors. A man wants sexual favors, he will find that. They didn't have to come to Epstein for that. So she basically said President Donald Trump, was not involved in anything. She threw water on the idea that there's a Black Book or a Epstein list. But listen to this back and forth.
when Todd Blanche went to interview Ghislaine Maxwell, she said, but did I think these guys were coming for that? I really don't. If you met Epstein, there's no way that this cast of characters, of which it's extraordinary, and some are in your cabinet, who you value as your co-workers, and you know would be with him if he was a creep or because they wanted sexual favors. So let me ask you, who are those cabinet members that Ghislaine Maxwell was referring to that, that were part of this cast of characters associated with Mr. Epstein? Who are they?
The Deputy Attorney General took the aggressive step that no one else did and interviewed Miss Maxwell for
I'm
2
asking you,
days,
who are
and we released
who are
the
the cabinet
entirety
members?
of that
Who are the cabinet
transcript.
members?
I do not have that transcript in front of me. You're picking it piecemeal.
Let me ask you one last question. And that is, right after she gives this testimony in front of an FBI agent, among others, she's transferred to a minimum security prison not suitable for a sex offender like herself. Who made that decision and why?
The Bureau of Prisons.
The Bureau of Prisons decided on their own, without any consultation with Blanche or anyone else, that they were going to suddenly, after this interview, completely unrelated to this interview, completely unrelated to anything she said, move her to a prison not suitable for a sex offender. You want the American people to believe that? Do you think they're stupid?
No, I think the American people believe the truth, that I'm not in the weeds on the everyday movements of
you're not in
inmates.
the weeds.
What I am
The
doing is
most-
protecting
the
this country,
most- the
providing
most
historic
significant
reform,
witness-
and
the most
combating the
significant witness
weaponization of
the
intelligence
Epstein
by the likes
files
of you.
cover-up
And we have
gets
countlessly proven you to
from
be a
your
liar in
administration,
Russiagate, in
and you
January
call that
6th.
being
You are
in
the
the
biggest
weeds?
fraud to ever sit in the
This
United States
stinks to
Senate.
high
You are a
heaven.
disgrace to this
This stinks to high
institution
heaven.
and an utter coward.
I-
You are a political buffoon at best.
Yeah, that final eruption turned the hearing's legal arguments into just absolute raw theater. And for listeners, viewers, it made the central truth of the day unmistakable. That legal limits, court orders, they have seemingly constrained what the FBI can or will release. But those constraints and the answers that they produce, I think it could be argued, it could be said, they may not be satisfying to survivors, to many members of Congress, or to the public. That's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me on X or Instagram. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll see you next time.